The shooting range smelled like burnt ozone and overconfidence. I stood there, all four of my arms crossed in what I hoped looked like casual superiority, watching the human female check her primitive projectile weapon. My name is Kelthara, Senior Tactical Officer of the Vryn Empire, and I had seen 1,000 species try to prove themselves worthy of joining the Galactic Military Coalition. Most failed. All of them at least tried to look professional. This one? She was smiling. You find something amusing, Specialist Morgan? I clicked my mandibles together, the Vryn equivalent of raising an eyebrow. She looked up from her weapon, this archaic thing humans called a pistol, and shrugged. Just thinking about how my grandma used to say, never trust anyone who doesn't respect a good gun. She'd love this whole setup you've got here. I glanced around the facility. Holographic targets, gravimetric stabilizers, quantum-locked safety fields, atmospheric controls that could simulate any known planetary condition. This was a 30 million credit installation. Your grandmother would be impressed by galactic standard equipment? Oh, she'd think it was overkill. Morgan slid a magazine into her weapon with a click that sounded almost musical. But she'd appreciate the enthusiasm. Overkill. The human said overkill. My secondary arms twitched with annoyance. I had been testing combat recruits for 16 cycles, and I had never, not once, had someone call our premier training facility excessive. The Kralix warlords had wept with joy at seeing our ranges. The Tholian shock troops had composed victory songs. This human thought we were trying too hard. Perhaps, I said slowly, you would prefer we simply stand in an empty field and throw rocks at each other? Now you're getting it, she grinned wider. Though I'm pretty good with rocks too, if you want to see that later. Blessed ancestors, give me strength. Commander Raxius slouched into the observation deck above us, his bulk making the reinforced floor creak. The Grenshari male was supposedly here to observe potential coalition candidates, but mostly he just ate protein cubes and made unhelpful comments. Today would apparently be no exception. Is that the human everyone's talking about? His voice boomed through the intercom. Unfortunately, I muttered. I heard that. Morgan called up cheerfully. Don't worry, Commander. I promise to either impress you or give you something to laugh about at dinner parties. Either way, you win. Raxius made a sound that might have been a chuckle or indigestion. With Grenshari, it was hard to tell. I like her already. Kelthara, try not to break this one with your judging eyes routine. I do not have a routine. You absolutely have a routine, Morgan said, settling into position at the firing line. I've seen your assessment vids. You do this thing where your left mandible twitches right before you fail someone. Very telling. I felt my left mandible twitch. No, not today. I was a professional. I had trained under Grand Marshal Thexian himself. I had survived the siege of Corvus Prime. I would not be rattled by a human who wore her confidence like cheap armor and treated a military evaluation like a social gathering. The test is simple, I said, activating the range controls. You will engage targets at varying distances, under different conditions, within a time limit. Accuracy, speed, and tactical awareness will be measured. 60% is passing. 80% is exemplary. 90% is considered exceptional and has only been achieved by 14 candidates in coalition history. What about 100%? I paused. In 17 years of testing, no one has achieved perfect marks. Cool. Morgan rolled her shoulders, loose and easy. What do I get if I'm the first? You won't be. That's not an answer. Because it is not a possibility worth discussing. She laughed. Actually laughed. The sound echoed off the walls, of the range, bright and sharp, and completely inappropriate for a military examination. You know what? I'm starting to see why humans have a reputation. We do love our long shots. Your species has a reputation for being reckless, unpredictable, and prone to surviving situations that should kill you through sheer stubborn refusal to acknowledge reality. "See?" she winked. "You do know us." Commander Raxius was definitely laughing now. I made a mental note to requisition him for latrine inspection duty. If I had to suffer, he would too. "Begin when ready," I said, initiating the course. The first target materialized 300 meters downrange. Standard humanoid silhouette, chest center marked in glowing orange, an easy shot by any measure, designed to establish baseline accuracy. Morgan raised her pistol in a smooth, practiced motion. The weapon barked once. The target's center mass indicator flashed green. Perfect hit. "Acceptable," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. The second target appeared at 500 meters, partially obscured by a holographic barrier simulating combat conditions. This required compensation for wind resistance, light refraction, and the natural wobble present in most bipedal species under stress. She fired. My primary hands tightened into fists. Adequate. Targets 3 through 7 appeared in rapid sequence, multiple angles, varying distances, several requiring shots through narrow openings. Standard difficulty progression. Nothing a trained soldier couldn't handle. Morgan moved like water. Smooth, flowing, never rushed, but never slow. Her weapon tracked, fired, tracked, fired. Green, 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 green. "You have done this before?" I said. Not a question. "Grew up on a ranch in Montana. That's a place on Earth with more cows than people." She ejected her spent magazine, loaded a fresh one without looking. "Dad taught me to shoot when I was 8. Said if I was going to live that far from civilization, I needed to know how to handle myself." "Your father trained you in military combat as a juvenile?" "Nah, he taught me to shoot. The military combat stuff came later." She grinned. "Though Dad always said good shooting is good shooting, doesn't matter if you're aiming at a target or a problem." "A problem?" I repeated flatly. "You know, wolves trying to get the chickens, coyotes circling the herd. Once, a bear that really wanted into our grain storage. You shot a bear. I shot near a bear. Big difference." He got the message and left. She paused. "Dad shot the bear the next night when it came back. I was grounded for a week for not finishing the job properly the first time." I stared at her. "Your parental unit punished you for showing mercy to a dangerous predator?" Dad said, "If you're going to do something, do it right. Half measures just make problems worse." She shrugged. "He wasn't wrong. That bear was a persistent jerk." Phase 2 initialized. The targets now moved, simulating enemy combatants under active engagement protocols. Reaction time became crucial. The targeting systems predicted most species would average 72% accuracy at this level. Morgan's percentage climbed to 94. "Interesting," Commander Raxius said, over the comm. "Very interesting. It is statistically anomalous," I corrected. "Nothing more." Sure. Totally normal. That's why your mandibles are doing the twitchy thing again." They were not. They absolutely were. I increased the difficulty. Phase 3 introduced environmental hazards. Simulated explosions created visual interference. Gravity fluctuations threw off aim. Atmospheric composition shifted, requiring constant recalculation of ballistic trajectories. No, that was inadequate terminology. Morgan thrived. She moved through the chaos like it was a dance she had rehearsed 1,000 times, her body compensating for each new variable before my sensors registered the change. When an explosion blocked her line of sight, she fired through the debris cloud at where the target should be based on trajectory prediction. She was right. When gravity suddenly inverted, she twisted in mid-air and took 3 shots before landing on what had been the ceiling. All hits. "Okay," Raxius said quietly. "That was genuinely impressive." I said nothing. My translator matrix was temporarily overwhelmed, trying to process what I was witnessing. "You look stressed, Officer Kelthara," Morgan called out, never taking her eyes off the range. Want me to slow down? I can slow down if this is too much paperwork. Continue. My voice came out rougher than intended. Your call. Another target. Another perfect shot. Though fair warning, I'm just getting warmed up. Warmed up. She considered this performance warm-up protocol. I activated Phase 4. This was the section that broke most candidates. The targets became actively hostile, returning fire with simulated weapons. The combat scenario shifted from shooting range to battlefield simulation. Most species required teams to survive this phase. Individual candidates typically lasted 90 seconds before the safety protocols pulled them out. The timer started. Morgan dropped into cover behind a barrier that had materialized, analyzed the tactical situation in what my sensors registered as 0.4 seconds, and made her first move. She went on the offensive. Correction. She went on the aggressive offensive. The human vaulted her barrier, sprinted directly toward the closest hostile target, while firing on the move. Slid beneath its return fire, came up shooting, eliminated it, used its falling hollow form as cover, spun, double-tapped 2 targets that had been flanking her, rolled left, came up in a crouch, and cleared the remaining 6 hostiles in the sector in under 11 seconds. Did she just? Raxius began. Yes, I said, but that is not how we... I know. The tactical manual specifically states, I am aware. Morgan reloaded, breathing steady, and pushed into the next sector. She was supposed to hold position and wait for the threat assessment. She was supposed to follow doctrine. She was supposed to be cautious. Instead, she was rewriting every engagement protocol we had established over 2 centuries of coalition warfare. A hostile appeared on her 6. She didn't turn. She angled her weapon backward over her shoulder and fired blind. Hit! How? Raxius demanded. Window reflection? Morgan said casually. Apparently our comm system carried her muttering. Saw the targeting laser. Basic stuff. Basic. She called that basic. The scenario intensified. 15 hostiles now. Coordinated suppression fire. Tactical positioning. This was designed to be impossible for a single combatant. The point was to teach candidates when to retreat and call for support. Morgan called for nothing. She moved through that kill zone like physics were suggestions rather than laws. Like every bullet fired at her was a personal insult she refused to acknowledge. She used the environment, used the enemy's own positioning against them, used momentum and timing, and apparently just pure human stubbornness to survive encounters that should have ended her simulation 6 times over. 2 minutes in, she had cleared the entire phase. That, Commander Raxius said slowly, is not possible. Apparently it is, I replied, checking my sensors for malfunction. Everything read nominal, which meant what I was seeing was real. Morgan stood in the center of the completed course, ejecting her final spent magazine. Is there a Phase 5, or are we done? Not complaining either way, just want to know if I should conserve ammo or not. There was no Phase 5. There had never been a Phase 5. Phase 4 was supposed to be the limit, the absolute ceiling of what we tested, because nothing beyond it was considered realistic combat scenario design. We are, I paused, choosing words carefully, not done. Awesome. She loaded her last magazine. Hit me. I looked at Raxius through the observation window. He looked back at me. We shared a moment of perfect understanding, the kind that comes when 2 military professionals realize they are watching something they cannot explain and have no procedures for handling. I did what any rational officer would do in this situation. I made something up. Phase 5, I announced, fingers dancing across controls I barely understood, activating systems that were meant for demonstration purposes only. Adaptive hostile algorithm, tactical modification protocols, and... I glanced at the environmental controls. full combat gravity randomization. That is not a real test. Raxius hissed through our private channel. I am aware, I hissed back. You are just throwing things at her now. Yes. This is extremely unprofessional. Also yes. I fully support this decision. Carry on. The range transformed. What had been a controlled environment became a shifting maze of death. Targets spawned at random. Gravity cycled between planetary extremes. Lighting strobed. Obstacles moved, and the hostile AI normally capped at intelligence level 3 jumped to level 7. Morgan looked around, took a long breath, and smiled. Now we're talking, she said. And she began. What followed was not a test. It was a demonstration, a masterclass, a complete dismantling of everything I thought I knew about individual combat capability. She adapted to gravity changes mid-stride. She predicted target spawns based on algorithmic patterns I had not realized were patterns. She used ricochets, used timing, used the environment like it was an extension of her own body. At one point, she ran horizontally along a wall during a gravity shift, fired upside down through a gap I had not realized existed, and eliminated 3 targets before the gravity reasserted itself, and she had to land in a roll that transitioned into a perfect firing stance. I need to sit down, Commander Raxius said. You are sitting down. I need to sit down more. 5 minutes into what I was now mentally calling the Human Chaos Protocol, Morgan completed the impossible course. With a 98.6% accuracy rating, she had missed exactly 2 shots out of 147. The range powered down. Holographic elements dissolved. Safety fields disengaged. Morgan stood in the sudden silence, her weapon smoking slightly, breathing hard but steady, and looking extremely pleased with herself. So, she said, looking up at the observation deck, do I pass? You, Raxius began, stopped, started again. That was freaky, Morgan offered helpfully. Dad always said I got weird when I focus. Used to worry him during target competitions. Said I looked possessed. Your father, I finally managed, is a wise male. She laughed. I'll tell him. You said that. He'll love it. Though he might also demand to know what kind of targets I was shooting at, that impressed an alien tactical officer. He gets protective. Your parental unit is concerned about your military service? Oh, he's thrilled about the military service. It's the alien part that makes him twitchy. She saved her weapon with practiced ease. He's still not convinced you all aren't going to dissect me for science. We have strict regulations against unauthorized dissection, I said automatically. That's what I told him. The unauthorized part really helped. Commander Raxius made a sound that might have been horror, or a choke, or possibly both. Morgan holstered her pistol and stretched, joints popping. So, what's the verdict? Do I get to join your space military club, or do I need to shoot something else? Because I should mention, I'm also pretty good with rifles. And bows. And that one time in basic training, I got creative with a combat knife and some duct tape, that the instructor said was either genius or psychotic. He never did decide which. I descended from the observation deck, my legs feeling oddly unstable. This human, this impossible, infuriating, incredible human. She had just achieved what no candidate in coalition history had managed, and she was treating it like a casual afternoon activity. Specialist Morgan, I said formally. Oh no, full names. Am I in trouble? I feel like I might be in trouble. You have achieved a 98.6% accuracy rating under combat conditions that exceed all established testing parameters. Cool. Is that good? It is unprecedented. So, better than good? It is. I paused, mandibles clicking in what might have been the Vrin equivalent of a laugh. Extremely good. Awesome! She stuck out her hand, that bizarre human greeting gesture. So, when do I start? I looked at her hand, looked at her face. open and eager, and absolutely unaware of the chaos she had just introduced into our carefully ordered military structure. Looked at Commander Raxius, who was still processing what he had witnessed. I took her hand, shook it, felt the calluses, the strength, the absolute confidence in that grip. "Tomorrow," I said. "You start tomorrow. Perfect. That gives me time to call my dad and tell him I officially made aliens nervous with a handgun." She grinned. "He's going to be so proud." She walked toward the exit, whistling something cheerful and completely inappropriate for a military facility. "Kelthara," Raxius said quietly over our private channel. "What have we just recruited?" I watched the human disappear through the doorway, already planning my report, knowing it would sound completely insane to command. Not caring one bit. "Trouble," I said finally. "We have recruited trouble. Good trouble or bad trouble?" I thought about those impossible shots, that casual competence, that smile that suggested she knew exactly how extraordinary she was and chose to pretend otherwise. "Yes," I said. And for the first time in 16 cycles of testing candidates, I felt something that might have been excitement, or possibly fear. With humans, I was learning, it was hard to tell the difference. The next morning, Morgan arrived at the Coalition Tactical Briefing Room wearing what appeared to be a shirt with a cartoon animal on it. "Is that?" I squinted at the image. "A cat operating heavy machinery?" "Yeah." It says, "Icon has excavator. Got it at a truck stop in Nevada." She set down a paper cup that smelled aggressively of caffeine. Humans find it funny. Don't ask me to explain why, because I honestly don't know. Raxius leaned over, his massive frame blocking half the light in the room. "I find it amusing." "See? The commander gets it." "I specifically said I do not understand it," I protested. "Understanding and enjoying are two different things, Officer Kelthara." Morgan pulled out a data pad. "So, what's on the agenda? More shooting? Tactical exercises? Please tell me there's breakfast involved, because I skipped it to get here early, and I'm running on spite and coffee." "Spite?" I repeated. "Determination's angry cousin." She took a long drink from her cup. Very effective fuel source. Before I could respond to that deeply concerning statement, the briefing room doors opened, and 3 more Coalition officers entered. Lieutenant Vex, a Tholian with scales that shifted color based on mood, currently showing nervous yellow. Captain Drumath, a Krylix whose 4 eyes were fixed on Morgan with obvious skepticism. And Major Yanara, a Sothran whose crystalline features revealed nothing. They had all heard about yesterday's performance. Word traveled fast in military installations, especially when someone broke every record in the database. "So, this is the human," Drumath said, his voice like grinding stones. "Guilty as charged." Morgan raised her coffee cup in greeting. "Fair warning, I'm not a morning person, and this is my first time meeting crystalline life forms, so if I accidentally say something offensive, it's ignorance, not malice." "You just called Major Yanara a crystalline life form," Vex hissed. The Sothran find that terminology reductive. "Oh no, really? I'm so sorry, Major. What's the correct term?" Yanara's facets caught the light, creating dancing reflections across the walls. When she spoke, her voice resonated like wind chimes. "Actually, we prefer it to the alternative most species use, which is rock people." "Rock people? That's way worse." Morgan looked genuinely offended on Yanara's behalf. "Who came up with that?" "The Teruvian delegation, approximately 40 cycles ago. The Teruvians sound like they need better education and possibly better manners." Morgan extended her hand toward Yanara, then paused. "Wait, do you folks shake hands? Or is that weird for your physiology?" "We do not physically interact for casual greetings." "No." Yanara's tone warmed slightly, but the gesture is appreciated. "Cool," filed away for future reference. Morgan turned to the others. "Anyone else have greeting customs I should know about?" I'm trying real hard not to accidentally start an intergalactic incident on day one. Your concern is noted, Vex said, his scales shifting toward a more neutral blue, though unnecessary. We have all reviewed your performance metrics from yesterday. Oh, good. So you know, I'm either really talented or a complete mess who got lucky. Morgan sat in a chair that was definitely not designed for human proportions, adjusted herself awkwardly, and gave up trying to look comfortable. For the record, it's probably 70-30. I'll let you decide which is which. Drumeth made a sound like a rock slide. You are either extremely confident or extremely stupid. Captain, if I may, I interjected, feeling oddly defensive of my recruit. Specialist Morgan's performance was legitimately exceptional. So I heard. Perfect scores under impossible conditions. Drumeth's eyes narrowed, all four of them. Which brings me to my question. How? Practice? Morgan offered. Insufficient answer. Okay, lots of practice. And genetics, probably. And growing up in a place where if you couldn't shoot straight, you didn't eat. She shrugged. Plus, I have really good spatial awareness and hand-eye coordination. Dad says it's because Mom made me do gymnastics as a kid, and I hated every second, but it apparently stuck. Your maternal parent forced you into athletic training? Yanara asked. Less forced, more enthusiastically encouraged, with no room for negotiation. Morgan grinned. Looking back, she knew what she was doing. All that balance beam work means I don't fall over when gravity gets weird. Speaking of which, I pulled up a holographic display showing Morgan's test footage. Can you explain this maneuver at timestamp 417? The image froze on Morgan running along a wall during a gravity shift. Oh, that. Yeah, so the gravity was cycling every 8 seconds based on the pattern I noticed around minute 3. I timed my approach so I'd hit the wall right as the shift happened. Used the momentum to carry me horizontal and took the shots while my body was still oriented to the previous gravity direction. She said it like she was explaining how to make a sandwich. Basic physics exploitation. Basic, Drumeth repeated flatly. I mean, once you notice the pattern, it's pretty straightforward. The trick is not overthinking it. Morgan took another drink of coffee. Also helps if you grew up playing a lot of video games where physics are suggestions and nothing makes sense. Video games, Vex said slowly. You are saying your military training comes from recreational simulations? Some of it, sure. The rest comes from actual training, combat experience. And that time I had to fight off 3 guys trying to rob a convenience store using nothing but a mop and aggressive language. Every officer in the room turned to stare at her. You fought multiple hostiles with a cleaning implement, Yanara stated. The mop was surprisingly effective. Very good reach. Decent weight distribution. Plus, I was really annoyed because they interrupted me buying snacks, and I take my snack time seriously. Morgan looked at our expressions. This is one of those stories that sounds impressive, but actually just makes me look unhinged, isn't it? Affirmative, I said. Thought so. For the record, the store owner gave me free snacks for a month, so totally worth it. Raxius laughed, a booming sound that rattled the furniture. I like this human very much. Kelthara, you have found us something special. I found you a liability with good aim, I corrected, but there was no heat in it. Same thing in my experience, Raxius said cheerfully. The briefing continued with typical orientation material. Coalition structure, chain of command, protocol expectations. Morgan listened attentively, asked intelligent questions, and only made 3 jokes that were borderline inappropriate for a military setting. Progress, I supposed. Then we reached the practical assessment portion. Today's exercise is team integration, I explained, pulling up a tactical map. You will be paired with Lieutenant Vex for a simulated hostage extraction scenario. Coordination and communication are prioritized over individual performance. Got it. Don't go rogue. Work together. Rescue the fake hostages. Morgan looked at Vex. You ready for this, Lieutenant? I have completed this scenario 47 times, Vex said, his scales flickering with what might have been pride. I am extremely ready. Awesome. I've completed it 0 times, so between us we average 23.5. That's practically a passing grade. That is not how averages work in tactical assessment, I said. It's how they work in my brain, and that's what counts. We moved to the simulation deck, a larger facility designed for squad-level training. The scenario loaded, displaying a multi-level structure with hostile signatures scattered throughout, and 3 friendly markers indicating hostage locations. Standard approach is methodical clearing, floor by floor, Vex explained, checking his weapon. We eliminate threats systematically and extract hostages in order of proximity. Sounds solid. Morgan surveyed the layout. What's the average completion time? 18 minutes for experienced teams. And the record? 12 minutes, held by a Kralix shock unit. Morgan's eyes got that look. That dangerous look I was beginning to recognize from yesterday. We're going to break that record, aren't we? I said. We're absolutely going to break that record, Morgan confirmed. Specialist, this is not a competition, I warned. Everything's a competition if you have the right attitude, officer. The simulation started. Vex moved tactically, professionally, exactly as trained. He advanced to the first corner, checked angles, signaled clear, proceeded to the next position. Morgan went through a window. What are you doing? Vex hissed over the comm. Shortcuts. Her voice came back cheerful and completely unconcerned. Ground floor is where they expect us. Second floor is where I'm bringing the surprise party. That is not protocol. I know. It's great, right? I watched through the observation feed as Morgan climbed the exterior of the structure, found an unguarded window, slipped inside, and immediately encountered 2 hostile signatures that had not expected anyone to be stupid enough to enter from that direction. She eliminated both before they could raise the alarm. Okay, Vex admitted. That was effective. Thanks. There's a stairwell to your left that's clear now if you want to join me. I found hostage number 1. The extraction proceeded in a way that would have given our tactical instructors heart attacks if they had hearts in the traditional sense. Morgan moved through that building like she had built it, herself, finding routes that shouldn't exist, taking angles that defied standard combat geometry, and somehow always being exactly where she needed to be. Vex, to his credit, adapted. Hostile at your 3, he called out. Got him. 2 more coming up the south corridor. On it. Hostage 2 secured. Beautiful. I'm heading to the 3rd. Cover the extraction point? Affirmative. They moved like they had trained together for months, instead of meeting 10 minutes ago. Morgan's unconventional approach somehow complemented Vex's methodical precision. Where he was steady, she was fluid. Where he was predictable, she was chaos. Together, they were devastatingly effective. The final hostage was in the most heavily guarded location, surrounded by 8 hostile signatures with overlapping fields of fire. This is where most teams bog down, I noted to the other observers. The optimal approach requires suppression fire, tactical grenades, and at least 4 minutes of careful positioning. Morgan's voice came through the comm. Hey Vex, you ever played the shell game? I do not understand the reference. It's where you have 3 cups and a ball, and you move them around real fast, and people lose track of which cup has the ball. I am familiar with the ball concept. Why is this relevant? Because I'm the ball. Start shooting at the eastern position in 3, 2, 1, now. Vex opened fire. The hostiles reacted, converging on his position. Morgan came through the western wall. Not the western door. The western wall. She had apparently found demolition charges somewhere in the simulation, placed them, and blown a hole through solid material to create an entry point no one was defending because it had not existed 30 seconds ago. Surprise! She shouted, and cleared the room in a whirlwind of motion that my sensors struggled to track. Final hostage secured. Extraction complete. Time elapsed, 9 minutes and 42 seconds. New record. Vex stood in the simulation. Aftermath, his scales cycling through colors so rapidly they created a strobe effect. That was, he began, against every protocol we teach? I supplied. I was going to say exhilarating. That too, unfortunately. Morgan emerged from the sim deck, grinning like she had won a contest. Did you see that wall breach? I wasn't even sure it would work, but sometimes you just gotta commit and see what happens. Drumoth rumbled. Simulated military infrastructure, Morgan corrected. And it wasn't a guess, it was an educated hypothesis that turned out correct. Science. That is not science, Yanara said. It's human science. We're very experimental. Raxius was laughing again, the sound echoing through the facility. Kelthara, I want her assigned to my unit. Absolutely not. She is my problem now. Your problem? Morgan looked between us. I thought I did good? I thought you did excellent, I admitted, which is precisely why you are a problem. Excellence disrupts established patterns. So, I'm too good, and that's bad? In military structures that value predictability, yes. Morgan processed this, then shrugged. Fair enough, though in my defense, I was told to complete the objective, and I completed the objective. Never said I had to do it the boring way. There is no boring way, Vex protested. There is the correct way and incorrect ways. Right. But some correct ways are more fun than others. Morgan pulled out her data pad. Can I get a copy of that footage? My dad's going to love the wall breach. He's always saying, when in doubt, make a new door. Your father sounds dangerously unhinged, I observed. He's a contractor. It's basically the same thing. The rest of the day continued in similar fashion. Every exercise became an opportunity for Morgan to redefine what we thought was possible. Hand-to-hand combat training turned into a demonstration of human flexibility that made our instructors question their understanding of skeletal structure. Navigation exercises became lessons in creative route planning that involved places the course designers had not intended anyone to go. By evening, I had 17 incident reports to file, 23 protocol violations to document, and one very tired human who still somehow had energy to make jokes. Today was awesome, Morgan said, as we walked toward the residential quarters. Though I gotta ask, is every day going to be this intense? Because I might need to up my coffee intake? Today was orientation. Actual assignments will be considerably more demanding. More demanding than breaking into simulated buildings and setting new records. Correct? Huh? She considered this. I'm going to need so much coffee. We reached her quarters, a standard military accommodation that she had already somehow personalized with items I did not remember approving. A blanket with earth patterns, a small plant in a container, a photograph of what I assumed was her family. Hey, Officer Kelthara? Morgan turned, her expression more serious than I had seen it all day. Thanks for giving me a shot at this. I know I'm probably not what you expected. That, I said carefully, is an understatement of profound magnitude. She laughed. Yeah, humans tend to have that effect. We're the universe's way of keeping things interesting. Interesting is one word for it. What's another word? I thought about the reports I would file, the records that had been broken, the protocols that had been shattered, the absolute chaos this one human had introduced into our carefully ordered military structure in less than 2 days. I thought about that smile, that confidence, that absolute refusal to be limited by what should be impossible. Necessary, I said finally. Morgan blinked. That's not what I expected you to say. You are not what I expected. It seems appropriate. I turned to leave, then paused. Specialist Morgan. Tomorrow you will be integrated into active duty rotation. Real missions, real consequences, real danger. I understand. You will be working with species who have trained for decades in methods you learned yesterday. Some will resent your presence. Others will doubt your capabilities despite evidence to the contrary. I can handle it. I know you can. I met her eyes, this strange human, with her impossible skills and casual attitude toward danger. But understand this. You are now representing your entire species to the coalition. Your actions reflect on humanity as a whole. The responsibility is significant. Morgan's expression shifted, showing something deeper than the cheerful exterior she maintained. Officer Kelthara, I grew up representing my family every time I left the ranch. Small town, everyone knows everyone, your reputation is everything. She stood straighter. I know how to carry responsibility, and I know how to make people proud. My dad taught me that right alongside teaching me to shoot. Your father sounds like a remarkable individual. He's pretty great. She smiled, softer now, though he'd probably tell you I'm the remarkable one, and he just pointed me in the right direction and tried not to mess it up too badly. Wise parenting strategy. I'll tell him you said that. 2. He's collecting alien compliments now, apparently. I left her there, this human who had turned my world sideways in 48 hours, and made my way back to my office, where those 17 incident reports waited. Commander Raxius was already there, sprawled across my secondary chair in defiance of all furniture weight limits. She is something special, he said without preamble. She is a statistical anomaly who will likely give me stress-related health problems. Same thing. He shifted, making the chair creak alarmingly. She is a statistical anomaly. The troops are already talking about her. The human who broke the shooting range, the one who goes through walls instead of doors. Wonderful. Exactly what I needed. A legend. Before she has completed a single actual mission. Better a legend on our side than facing us from the other. Raxius stood, the chair sighing with relief. You know what this means, don't you? That my job has become significantly more complicated? That too. He moved toward the door, then looked back. But also that maybe, just maybe, humans are going to change everything we thought we knew about warfare. That is a terrifying prospect. Yes, Raxius agreed, but also exciting. And I have not been excited about anything in 6 cycles. He left. I sat at my desk, pulled up Morgan's files, and stared at the performance metrics that should not exist. 98.6% accuracy, 9-minute record-breaking extraction, 0 hesitation under any circumstance. And through it all, that smile. That absolute certainty that impossible was just a word people used when they had not tried hard enough. My translator chimed with an incoming message. From Morgan. Hey, Officer Kelthara. Quick question. Are there regulations against painting my door? Because I found this really cool galaxy pattern online, and I think it would look great. Let me know. Also, thanks again for today. It was seriously awesome. Sleep well. I stared at the message. She wanted to paint her door. This human who had revolutionized our combat assessments in 2 days was asking permission to decorate military housing. I typed back. Regulations technically prohibit unauthorized modifications to coalition property. 3 dots appeared indicating she was typing. Oh, okay. Sorry for asking. I paused, mandibles clicking in what might have been amusement, then added, however, I see no regulations against authorized modifications. Permission granted. Do not make me regret this decision. The response was immediate. You are the best. I promise it'll look amazing. You won't regret this. Well, probably won't regret this. Okay, I can't guarantee anything, but I'll try real hard. I closed the communication channel and returned to my reports. 17 incidents, 23 violations. 1 human who treated military service like an adventure and impossible like a challenge. And somehow, against all logic and experience, I found myself looking forward to tomorrow, to seeing what other records she would break, What other protocols she would redefine. What other assumptions about human capability she would demolish with that infuriating smile and casual competence. Commander Raxius was right. Humans were going to change everything. And Specialist Morgan, with her cartoon t-shirts and coffee dependency and absolute refusal to acknowledge limitations, was leading that charge. I began typing my report to Coalition Command, knowing they would read it and think I had lost my mind. Subject: Human Integration Assessment. Conclusion: Recommend immediate expansion of Human Recruitment Program. Further conclusion: Request hazard pay for supervising officers. I paused, then added one final line. Additional note: The human asked to paint her door. I said yes. I do not know why I said yes. Send help. I submitted the report, closed my files, and headed toward my own quarters. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new chaos, new impossibilities made possible. And somewhere in the residential wing, a human was probably already painting galaxies on her door while planning her next way to rewrite our understanding of what soldiers could do. I should have been worried. I should have been concerned. Instead, I was smiling. Or at least, my mandibles were arranged in what passed for a smile among my species. Humans. The universe's answer to the question nobody asked, but everybody needed. And we had just recruited the best one. Or the worst one. Time would tell. Though knowing Specialist Morgan, it would probably be both.